Hello everyone, Studlord here, and as I post this video, it is the 14th of April 2024, meaning it's now been 112 years to the day since the Titanic, Queen of the Ocean, hit the iceberg that would cause the ship to sink in the early hours of April 15th, with over 1,500 of those aboard dying at sea. Now, as I've finally gotten around to building the Lego version, and before it retires, more on that later, I thought now was the perfect time for a little tribute, where we will look at some fun and interesting facts about our Lego Titanic here, and how they relate to the real thing. So, fact number 1, this model is a 1 to 200 scale, meaning that although you could fit it inside the real thing about 8 million times over, one-dimensionally it is only 200 times smaller. Now, I find it amazing to think that this model, at 1.35 meters long, which is just under 4.5 feet, laying 200 of these in a row would get you to the 882 feet, or 269 meters, that was the length of the Titanic. I mean, math is math, but thinking about it is pretty mind-boggling. Now, fact number 2, our Lego Titanic comes equipped with some nice little lifeboats, but there are only 16 of them. The real one actually had 20 aboard. Sadly, that's not the main fact, because 20 lifeboats were never going to be enough. It had capacity for 64, but wasn't carrying them, offering a little less than 1,200 people sanctuary when the ship itself was made for 3,320. Even worse, the first lifeboat launched only had 28 people on it when it could safely hold 65. I'd also like to mention the animals, who are rarely spoken of in facts and figures, but they must have been just as terrified as the people aboard, and only 2 dogs survived. Now, whilst the Titanic was never actually called unsinkable officially, it was referred to as practically unsinkable. Perhaps it was this thinking that first paved the way to tragedy. On to fact number 3, and Lego's model has one of their highest price tags, £590, $680, the same in euros, but this is nothing compared to the cost of building the real RMS Titanic. Back then, it cost £1.5 million British pounds, which was the equivalent then to about $7.5 million. In today's money, that's roughly £142 million, or $177 million with current conversion. It would be closer to $240 million based off of that initial number when the dollar was worth much less than the pound compared to today. Then, as for the Titanic movie, it was the most expensive film ever made at the time, costing $200 million. But it was a worthwhile investment, grossing over $2.2 billion in theatres and over another billion in VHS and DVD sales. And if you're watching this and are too young to know what a VHS is, then you're making me feel as old as the shipwreck. Moving on then to fact 4, and Lego's Titanic here is made up of 3 main sections. These can be opened up by simply removing 2 very clever little key pieces. When we open it, we reveal some nice detailing inside, and whilst there is some artistic license being taken, it is a wonderful touch, giving us an idea of what it was like. Now, just here we have a swimming pool, and the real Titanic was the very first ship to have a swimming pool in it. I mean, common on cruises now, of course, but back then, I honestly can't imagine how amazing that must have been. As for fact 5, it's a feature I very much like, and it's the 2 anchors on the front of our ship. Titanic herself also had 2 anchors, but they weighed a little bit more than their Lego counterparts here. Each anchor was a whopping 15 tons. However, that's nothing compared to at the other end of our ship. The propellers here, which do turn very satisfyingly, were even heavier. The central one was 22 tons, whilst the outer 2, made of bronze, weighed 38 tons. Now for fact 6, and 1,000 bottles of wine were apparently taken aboard, but as there were over 600 people sailing between first and second class, that doesn't seem like nearly enough, although that could say rather more about me than it does them. More impressive was the 825 tons of coal used per day to power the Queen of the Ocean. Whilst our Lego version shows off its massive engines, it has neither coal nor wine aboard. Instead, it has its own impressive numbers, being made up of 9,090 pieces. When Lego released it, it was the biggest set they'd ever put up for sale, and as I film, it's in 3rd place, with only the Eiffel Tower and the world map having more pieces. On to fact 7, and as we looked at earlier, our Lego version can come apart in an easy but controlled way. The real one had a rather more violent parting. After hitting the iceberg, it took on about 400 tons of water every minute. After approximately 38,000 tons of water entered the bow, it lifted the stern up out of the ocean before breaking away. And I honestly can't imagine how terrifying that must have been. Now for fact 8, and stepping away from Lego for a moment, we turn to the movie and the loss of life it dramatises. Now I do love the film, but whilst the story behind it is fictional, there could very well have been a Jack and Rose on the ship. Although they weren't married, we do know that there were 13 couples on their honeymoon for that voyage. Plus however many more who had their own love stories and lives both on that ship and waiting for them when it docked. Most of them had their futures torn apart, just like the ship itself. Off the back of that comes fact 9. Whilst our model splits in 3, the real one was torn in 2, and it took between 5 to 10 minutes for the ship to reach the ocean floor, 12,600 feet below the surface. Now, since its discovery, more and more expeditions have gone to the wreck and thousands of artifacts have been recovered. Whilst it is important to recover some items so that it's simply not forgotten, many feel that this final resting place, a marker for so many who died, should be left to rest in peace. I have to admit, now that we have so many salvaged items, I think perhaps it should now be allowed to do just that. But with that said, we come to fact 10. The Titanic shipwreck could disappear by the year 2030 because bacteria is eating its iron. The exact quantity is debatable, but it is considered to be at least 180 kilograms, which is 400 pounds every day. Some say up to 270 kilos or 600 pounds a day. Now, I think it is quite shocking that something so enormous, which has been beneath the waves for over 11 decades, will be gone in just 6 years from when I filmed this. Now, there are so many more interesting things to know about the Titanic, but those are a few of my favourites. Share yours below. Of course, the main question is, should you buy Lego's homage to the Queen of the Ocean before it retires? Different sources have its retirement date widely apart, as soon as the end of 2024 all the way through to 2026. Now, Lego have not officially confirmed it, but I think we will see this available until 2025. I could be wrong, but I don't think it will go this year. But it's still not far off either way. Now, if you want an extremely impressive Lego set and have the money for this, which is no mean feat, then I would say very strongly consider it, as it's one of the most incredible sets you could possibly display. But if it means more to you than that, if you want something to represent the Titanic itself, something which, for me at least, tugs on the heartstrings, then you should absolutely buy it. It may have a few errors, some details that aren't quite right, but you can ask too much of something made out of Lego. For me, this goes far further than the bricks themselves and is worth its price and more. All you need to do is find a suitably big enough place to display it. Of course, it's quite heavy, so can pull a shelf off a wall, as I've discovered, but that may say more about my DIY skills than it does the set. Thanks for watching. Let me know if you've bought this or if you're going to be getting it, and any cool facts that you like about the Titanic. Bye for now, catch you on the next one.